What if the next electric car to beat BYD at its own game wasn't even built by BYD? For years, the story out of China has been simple. BYD builds the biggest, cheapest, longest-range EVs on the planet, and everyone else scrambles to catch up. But a rival automaker called Changan just quietly dropped a car that flips that script, and the numbers behind it are strange enough to make you ask a different question entirely. What if the secret to a better electric car isn't a bigger battery but a lighter one? Changan is one of China's oldest state-backed automakers, and it has spent the last few years turning itself into an EV powerhouse almost nobody outside China talks about. Its electric sub-brand, called Nevo, builds a sedan called the A06, and it's about to launch a new top-tier version of that car with a range of up to 500 miles on a single charge, using the CLTC testing cycle that Chinese regulators rely on. Real-world numbers, especially by the tougher American EPA standard, would likely land lower, but even accounting for that gap, this is a range figure that used to be reserved for six-figure luxury EVs. Now it's showing up in a mid-size sedan that starts under $16,000. So how did Changan get there? This is where it gets interesting, because the answer isn't a bigger battery pack, it's the opposite. The new A06 uses an 80 kilowatt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery developed jointly with CATL, the Chinese company that is, by a wide margin, the largest battery maker on Earth. CATL doesn't just supply cells to random automakers, it supplies cells to nearly everyone, including Tesla, Ford, and yes, even BYD indirectly through licensing and joint ventures. But this particular pack was engineered specifically with Changan, and when you put it side by side with a similarly sized battery from BYD, roughly 82 kilowatt hours, Changan's version comes in about 320 pounds lighter. 320 pounds might not sound dramatic until you think about what that weight actually costs a car. Every extra pound in an EV battery has to be dragged around by the motor, cooled by the thermal system, and supported by the chassis. It affects acceleration, it affects handling, it affects how much energy the car burns just carrying its own weight. So a battery that stores nearly the same amount of energy while weighing significantly less isn't a minor engineering footnote. It's arguably the single most important trend in the entire EV industry right now. Automakers have spent a decade racing to add bigger batteries for more range. Now the real race might be who can deliver the same range with less material, less cost, and less weight. And Changan isn't just leaning on the battery to sell this car. The new A06 pairs that pack with an electric motor producing roughly 330 horsepower, sending power to the rear wheels with a top speed of about 117 miles per hour. That's genuinely quick for a family sedan, and it puts this car in a performance bracket that, again, used to belong to far more expensive vehicles. On top of that, Changan is adding a roof-mounted LiDAR sensor to this version, the same kind of hardware companies like Xpeng and Li Auto use to power advanced driver assist systems that go beyond what most Western automakers currently offer outside of Tesla's camera-only approach. LiDAR uses laser pulses to build a real-time three-dimensional map of the road, and putting it on a mainstream sedan, not a flagship, signals that Changan expects semi-autonomous driving features to become a standard expectation rather than a premium upsell. This isn't Changan's first attempt at the A06 either. The car already exists in two other electric configurations. The base version makes around 160 horsepower with a 51 kilowatt-hour battery good for roughly 317 miles. A mid-tier version bumps that up to about 286 horsepower, a 63 kilowatt-hour battery, and close to 390 miles of range. So this new 800-kilometer flagship variant isn't a replacement. It's an addition at the very top of an already competitive lineup, aimed squarely at buyers who want maximum range without stepping up to a luxury badge. The car itself is a reasonably sized mid-size sedan, about 16 feet long with a wheelbase just over 9.5 feet, putting it in the same physical footprint as something like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord. Pricing for this specific long-range trim hasn't been announced yet, but the existing A06 lineup sells in China for the equivalent of roughly $15,000 to $21,000. even if the new flagship version commands a premium over that range. It's almost certainly going to undercut anything with comparable range and performance sold in the United States or Europe today, where a 500-mile EV usually means a Lucid Air or a Mercedes EQS starting well north of $80,000. Here's the bigger picture we're sitting with. This entire announcement is really a proxy war for something much larger than one car. BYD didn't get to become the best-selling EV maker on the planet by accident, and it isn't standing still either. It's been pushing its own battery technology and rolling out sedans with even more extreme range claims. But Changan's move shows that BYD's dominance is not guaranteed, and that the next phase of competition in China isn't just about who can build the biggest battery, it's about who can build the smartest one. And the scale here matters. Changan's EV division alone sold over 35,000 vehicles in a single month recently, a jump of nearly 34% compared to a year earlier. That's not a niche experiment. That's a company scaling fast in what is now the largest EV market in the world. For American buyers, none of this is available yet, and given current trade policy and tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles, it may not be for a long time, if ever, at least not under the Changan badge. But that's almost beside the point. Technology like this doesn't stay contained. Battery chemistry, weight reduction techniques, and CATL's manufacturing partnerships tend to ripple outward into the global supply chain, including into batteries that end up in cars sold right here in the US. So the real question isn't whether you'll ever park a Changan Nevo A06 in your driveway. It's whether the American EV market, still leaning heavily on nickel-based chemistries in heavier packs, can keep up with a Chinese industry that just proved you can get luxury car range in an economy car body at an economy car price using a battery that weighs less than the one from the company everyone thought was already winning.